When the first winter wind swept across the tundra, the people knew that the sky would soon come alive with dancing colors. This was not merely a natural marvel to them, but a sign of a greater force at work. Old legends told of a woman cloaked in frost, dwelling in an ice-crusted land beyond the horizon. She held sway over the auroras, weaving trails of color that illuminated the heavens in the long nights of the Arctic. When the well-worn tracks of ancestors grew dark and uncertain, she guided wandering souls with her radiant tapestry in the sky. Children would stand outside their snow houses, faces turned upward in silent wonder, while their elders recounted the old tales that spoke of the woman who possessed a heart of compassion and a power as formidable as the endless Arctic cold. In one of the fishing villages that dotted the rugged coastline, an old man named Tulimak carried these stories within him like living embers. He remembered them from his grandmother, who had lived to see a span of years almost beyond counting. On a moonless evening, as the biting wind whistled fiercely through the cracks in the wooden huts, Tulimak sat before an oil lamp's feeble glow, sharing a tale with a boy named Ikaluk, whose dark eyes were filled with question. Ikaluk had only glimpsed these lights a few times in his young life, but each time, an unspoken awe lit up his entire being. He wanted nothing more than to understand their origin and purpose, so he listened attentively to Tulimak's voice, which bore both a tremor of age and an undercurrent of excitement at finally passing on this knowledge. "This woman, they say," Tulimak began, "arose long ago, when day and night were not as they are now. She was born under a moonless sky. Its darkness hung heavy as old seal hides. Yet from her first cry, the winds and the snow hummed a gentle lullaby, as though they knew her destiny before anyone could speak it aloud." As Tulimak spoke, his voice dropped low, and the boy leaned in, intrigued. Her name was Kalikit, means lightning of the sky. For her people, Kalik was a promise in dark times, a promise that even in endless night, one could find guidance. Centuries ago, Kalik lived in a village much like this one, surrounded by ice floes and swirling gusts that rattled the walls of their dwellings. According to the stories, she was an ordinary girl who helped tend the evening fires and sang lullabies to children huddled against the cold. From time to time, Kalik stood alone on the snowy plains in the heart of night. She would gaze at the dark dome above, an enormous stage bereft of color, and wonder if it was waiting for something only she could provide. She noticed how even the Arctic hares and foxes paused under that immense canopy, as though anticipating a spectacle yet to unveil. In those quiet, still hours, her breath formed small clouds, touched with an ethereal shimmer that no one else seemed to notice. Word spread when unusual phenomena began to ripple around her. Tiny motes of luminescence flickered in the air whenever she was near, like sparks drawn from a hidden realm. Elders murmured and cast worried looks. Some believed these lights were warnings, while others sensed they carried hope. Kalik herself felt a mysterious pull inside her chest whenever she saw them. Late at night, she started to walk beyond the boundaries of her settlement to the isolated reaches of the tundra, silent except for the wind's whistle in her ears. Upon these stretches, she would sit and listen, though she was unsure to what. And gradually she became aware of voices in the wind, distant as echoes in a deep cave, beckoning her to venture further into the unknown. One day, while her family slept, Kalik followed an urgent call that tugged at her spirit. She wandered into a barren expanse of ice so vast that even the stars seemed distant. The sky above was a velvety chasm, and the cold stung her lungs with each breath. It was there that she encountered something extraordinary, an opening in the air, as though the fabric of the world had been peeled back to reveal swirling patterns of light. Cautiously, she reached out. A faint, luminescent gust wound around her arm and tingled up her shoulder, leaving her entire body throbbing with energy. She sensed how this energy connected her to something larger, something that thrummed with currents of life and memory. In that singular moment, she understood. This radiant phenomenon was the realm of lost spirits, and it needed a guide to help them find their way home. Kalik returned to her people changed. Her hair seemed to crackle with stray flashes of green or blue in dim firelight, and her eyes held a glow reminiscent of moonlit crystals. She spoke little of what had transpired, but her presence pulsed with quiet authority. Over time, the village realized that Kalik possessed the ability to manipulate these veils of color, and that she could coax them into dancing across the sky on even the darkest nights. But this wasn't a mere spectacle. It served a sacred function. Each ribbon of light that Kalik summoned was a pathway for souls who drifted lost in the Arctic gloom. Through her, the shimmering auroras would extend from one horizon to the other, and drifting spirits, separated from the warmth of the living, could follow these gentle arcs to rejoin the ancestors. Yet her fate was written in the icy wind. The more Kalik wielded this ethereal energy, the more her mortal form yielded to the demands placed upon her. Her skin took on the pallor of fresh snowfall, and the warmth in her blood dissipated as though stolen by the glacial wind. Villagers state that on her final mortal day, she walked alone into the swirling drifts with steady resolve. Some claim they saw her vanish into a beam of shimmering light, fusing herself forever with the heavens. Others said she froze solid on the tundra, and her soul rose upward to become one with the auroras. Regardless of the version told, all concur on one crucial truth. Kalik did not perish in any ordinary sense. She transcended, wedded to the sky, and destined to hold dominion over the shifting colors, aiding the wandering spirits indefinitely. The telling of Kalik's legend was a mesmerizing experience for Ikaluk. Night after night, beneath a cover of sealskin blankets, he pondered the swirling lights. He longed to witness them dance in unison across the sky, and in doing so, maybe catch a glimpse of the frost-bound woman who made them move. On a particularly fierce night, when the wind roared louder than thunder, Tulimak's story concluded with stern advice: never call upon her for trivial reasons. She is no simple conjurer. Her power must be respected. These lights belong to both the living and the lost. The boy shivered, nodding solemnly, but a spark of determination remained in his gaze. He was certain the day would come when he would see her, and that day would change him forever. The darkness of winter stretched on endlessly, gripping the village in a deep freeze. The ocean's surface shimmered like shattered glass under faint moonlight, and the people survived by harvesting fish through holes in the ice and hunting seals when they could. In the hush that enveloped the settlement, stories became a form of sustenance as vital as food. Gathered in communal spaces, they recounted ancestral tales of cunning foxes, love-stricken hunters, and heroic journeys. Yet the tale that enthralled them most remained that of Kalikow. She could part the darkness with her shimmering tapestries of light to guide both the living and the dead. These lights were rumored to soothe the hearts of those carrying sorrow, reminding them that no matter how lost one felt, a path homeward existed. In those moments, the villagers found hope. One frigid night, the auroras materialized with breathtaking brilliance. Thin streams of green soared overhead, then blossomed into sprawling curtains that shimmered with pulses of blue and violet. Ikaluk, awakened by a restless curiosity, crept outside. The sky above felt vibrant, as though an unseen hand drew patterns in invisible ink, revealing them only when stirred by the night's breath. Transfixed, the boy stood with his arms outstretched, reaching for the shifting tendrils of light. Something stirred in the edge of his vision, a slender figure with a quiet luminescence shimmering around her silhouette. He blinked, uncertain for a heartbeat whether he was still asleep. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished. Yet the encounter was enough to confirm for him that the woman Tulimak had described was real. His heart beat in his ears, a mixture of exhilaration and reverence. Spurred by that vision, Ikaluk began to slip out on subsequent nights, quietly trudging beyond the village's boundaries to watch for any sign of the Aurora or the mysterious figure. His mother worried, but Tulimak encouraged her to let the boy be. "Curiosity is how we learn," the old man would say. And perhaps Killick calls to him. While the other children slept or played inside, Igaluk perched on small outcroppings of rock at the edge of the tundra, peering at the sky as a vast question waiting to be answered. Sometimes, a faint glimmer would dance briefly at the horizon, then fade. Other times, the sky remained a forbidding cloak of blackness. Still, he persisted, believing with unwavering devotion that the frost-bound guardian would reveal herself when the time was right. Not just for him, but for those who needed her most. One chilly day, tragedy befell the village. A group of hunters who had gone to gather seal meat vanished in a sudden storm before they could make their return. Days passed, and no sign of them surfaced. The villagers grew anxious, organizing search parties that ventured farther and farther across the ice, striving to locate any trace of the missing hunters. Each dawn brought fresh disappointment. The families of the lost men gathered every evening, praying for guidance and a safe return. Their anguish weighed heavily over the settlement like a hush that followed each gust of wind, a collective dread that turned the simplest daily tasks into mournful routines. Igaluk watched the sorrow etching itself into every adult face. Helplessness pressed in on every home as the nights grew darker, and swirling snow obliterated all tracks. Though small, the boy yearned to assist his people. He remembered Tulimak's words, "Be cautious about calling upon Kalik for trivia." But this was no trivial matter. Loved ones could be freezing and alone in the wilderness, trapped beneath a relentless storm and disoriented in the polar night. The auroras existed to guide those who were lost, both those who had passed from this world and those who still clung to life. In his heart, Igaluk felt certain that if anyone could light a pathway home, it would be Kelly. One evening, as a weary hush enveloped the village, he wrapped himself in a thick fur coat and ventured forth onto the tundra alone. The half-moon gleamed dimly upon the silent, snowy expanse, but a chill rubbed against his bones as he set out to find the spirit of the frost-bound woman. He walked far until the village lights receded behind him. A resolute hush shared breath with the swirling snow. Not a single star broke the night's uniform darkness. Igaluk's boots crunched over the crystalline surface, and every exhalation formed a vaporous ghost that dissolved as quickly as it appeared. Drawing upon the courage that guided him there, he closed his eyes, conjuring in his mind's eye the vibrant green and violet curtains he had seen. It was an unspoken plea. He thought of the lost hunters, and he summoned the image of spirit lights that soared skyward. "Kali," he whispered, his voice trembling, "if you can hear me, shine your auroras. Guide them home, just as you guide the wandering spirits. Please, we need your help." Nothing happened at first. The air seemed still before the endless cold. He cried out again, desperation cracking his young voice. Then, faintly, something stirred in the sky, a subdued flicker that teased the horizon. It flickered like a distant promise, a single brush of luminescence against the darkness. Gradually, it took shape, a band of green that flowed outward like ink spreading across paper. Igaluk opened his eyes in awe. The ribbon of light grew brighter and fuller, reaching up overhead, where it expanded into a shimmering tapestry of emerald, turquoise, and threads of faint pink. A figure stood not far from him, clothed in shimmering frost, her hair luminescent, moving gently in a wind that seemed to exist only for her. Kalik gazed at the boy, her expression tempered by power, yet suffused with compassion. She gave a nod, as if acknowledging both his plea and his courage. A silent tide of color descended over the region. As if taking their cue from Kalik, thin veils of light wove themselves into arcs that extended outward like portals into a hidden realm. Each arc reached across a corner of the horizon, converging in a grand canopy overhead. The entire world glowed with a fleeting radiance that made the snow glisten with otherworldly luster, as though the ice had awakened to greet a revered guest. Though unnerving in its silence, the spectacle emanated a warmth that transcended the physical cold. In that instant, Ikaluk sensed what the elders meant by guidance. The auroras were more than flickers in the sky. They were a promise that no one, living or dead, would wander in shadows forever. Disoriented souls, whether parted by death or lost in a blizzard, could follow these streams of light, if only they opened their hearts to see. And see them, the hunters did. Out in a frozen expanse that concealed all traces of direction, they beheld ribbons of green and pink flickering in the sky. So compelling was the celestial display that even the howling wind seemed hushed, allowing the men to gather their bearings. The brilliance of the auroras revealed the outlines of distant hillsides and the faint glow where the village huts stood. Reinvigorated by this sight, the hunters trudged onward, guided by the unearthly radiance that seemed to summon them to safety. Each step gave them renewed hope. They recalled the old teachings, stories of a frost-bound woman who blazed the path home with a gentle, unwavering light. Geluk lingered in that open tundra for what felt like hours, watching the auroras shift and glimmer. He barely felt the biting cold around him, so captivated was he by the presence of Kalik. She approached him, her steps so light they didn't leave a trace in the snow. Up close, her face retained a hint of ageless beauty, neither youthful nor aged, but timeless, etched with the memory of centuries. "You have a brave heart," she said gently. Her voice resonated in the silence, crystalline yet warm. "You called me to save those who still have life to live. That is a worthy call." The boy stood speechless, feeling tears prickle in his eyes. He sensed the depth of her sacrifice, a binding with the luminous realm that set her apart from any ordinary human warmth. Yet, in that separation, she found a sacred role, bridging the living and the departed. With a faint smile, she lifted her hand, and a tendril of light floated between them. "All souls deserve guidance," she whispered. "In every darkness, there is somebody searching for the way." Ikaluk nodded, acknowledging both gratitude and understanding in his gaze. Though he was just a child, he realized that the legends were more than just stories meant to amaze him. They were a narrative of duty and care for all who are alone in despair. Kalik turned away, drifting back toward the sky. Just before she dissolved into the shimmering curtains overhead, she paused, looking over her shoulder as if to say, "Remember what you've asked for, little one. Never let your compassion grow cold." Then she was gone, merged once more into lights that pulsed briefly, then receded into the blackness. The day the missing hunters returned was one of great celebration. Though weary and frostbitten, they had been guided by the auroras back to their people. The village erupted in relief and joy, singing songs that soared above the icy fields and offering thanks to whichever benevolent spirit had intervened. Tulamak caught sight of Ikaluk among the throng, observing the celebrations with quiet pride. The old man approached and laid a gentle hand upon the boy's shoulder. "You must have prayed with all your heart," he said. Ikaluk merely smiled in response, memories swirling in his mind of how the sky parted for him that night. Tulamak nodded, a knowing gleam in his wise, aged eyes. In the following weeks, Ikaluk frequently found himself called to the shorelines at dusk, gazing longingly at the sky. He no longer needed to see Kilik's form to believe in her existence. Instead, each glimpse of the undulating lights filled him with a sense of reunion, like greeting a friend who inhabited a distant place but was never truly gone. The elders noticed a new maturity in the boy's demeanor, a calm but passionate outlook. He became a source of comfort for those plagued by grief, reminding them softly that No one is ever truly lost. On quiet nights, he narrated the story of that fateful evening to other children, passing on the gift of wonder that Tulimak had given him. Time slipped by as winters melted into fleeting summers and back into icy darkness. Yet the story of Kalik increased in significance. Her legend began to symbolize both the unstoppable might of nature and the relentless compassion that could flourish even in the harshest conditions. Parents repeated the story to their children, who would watch for the auroras and hope, if only for a moment, to see that frost-bound figure drifting through the colors. The more the winds howled, the more fervently they believed, for in that howling, they detected an echo, a reassurance that the guardians of the polar night remained vigilant. The strong ties of kinship and community drew strength from that knowledge. As for Ikaluk, he grew into a man, eventually carrying the same role that Tulimak once had, the keeper of legends. When difficult storms beset the village, when families became lost or separated, he guided renewed pleas to Kalik, and the northern lights would respond with a majestic glow. Though he never again saw her as vividly as he had on that night, he felt her presence in the shifting luminescence. It became enough to know she was near, orchestrating gentle waves in the sky that extended far beyond the village, reaching deep into realms unseen. Her name was never forgotten, nor was her mission. Across the ice fields, on remote peaks, and in the swirling seas of stars overhead, each flicker was a reminder. The lost can always find their way when there is someone to show them the path. So, the legend remains, a message of hope carried on a cold, biting wind that traverses the Arctic. Some vanish into storms and lose their bearings, drifting out of time and place. But the fortunate ones, those who open their eyes and hearts, eventually witness colors, dancing at the frontier between mortal life and what lies beyond. No matter how formidable the night, how long and lonely the darkness, those shimmering lights guide them toward a warmth of community and love. And at the center of it all stands the frost-bound woman. She is neither ghost nor goddess, but a sacred guardian born of a promise that not even the longest winter can erase. In her arms, the drifting souls find comfort, cradled in a luminous corridor through which they return home, stepping out from the cold into gentle radiance. Even now, when the children gather by the soft glow of a lamp in the community house, Ikaluk recounts the story of how Kalik touched his life. Eyes alight, they listen to his reverent voice describing her quiet grace, remembering how the auroras flared brilliantly that unforgettable night. Each child shivers with delight, imagining that if they just venture out during the coldest, darkest night, and if their need is genuine, they might witness her too. The older folks nod along, some with tears, some with silent smiles. For though the Arctic winter is long and precarious, it is also a realm of timeless wonder, and none is more profound than that ethereal bond, a woman's promise to guide those who wander, ensuring that no enduring soul remains lost in the perpetual night.